Hello and welcome to Ranked Rambles, Episode 2. Ban Talk. Alright, so back into Ranked Rambles here. Our first match against Painted Check, and they're on a green-black rock. A lot of rock in this set. I'll discuss other videos as we go along. But for the topic of today's video, I really wanted to discuss bans and potential bans. Basically the question, does Pioneer need bans? With the march forward to Pioneer that we've been promised from Wizards regarding Explorer and Arenas formats, do we have to look at potentially bans with that coming up? And well, if you look at the current Pioneer metagame, there's two predominantly top tier decks that are played pretty much everywhere. That's Mono Green Niv-Mizzet and Rakdos midrange. I know that most first Pioneer tournament we have was also run by Transmogrify. Well, Abominable Creativity, but we'll discuss that as we come to it. Now, there's a number of cards that could be banned, but we got to think about how they would affect the meta. And honestly, if there was going to be a ban, I think you'd have to hit both decks, because I believe between the two of them, they cause like 30+% of the meta. And I know from my experience, the last time I ran through a Pioneer League myself, I ran into, I think it was Rakdos twice and Mono Green Devotion twice, and then a fifth deck that was just doing something crazy. So let's talk through some of the bans and some of the reasons for, well, one of the reasons why I think it could happen. First one is really Niv-Mizzet. I know a lot of people have Niv-Mizzet Shrine to Nyx on its ban list. For those of you who don't know, it's a legendary land that you can pay to tap and add mana equal to your devotion to that colour. Obviously this is played in the Mono Green Devotion deck. It is the linchpin of the deck. Now, the reason I am not 100% behind on this banning is I think it will literally kill the deck. I think taking it out of the deck would, as I say, there would be no more devotion decks in general. So, but then at the same time, there is the argument that if we don't nip it in the bud, we'll constantly be doing bans. Because if you look at Pioneer when it first launched, Mono Black was the initial problem, and the number of cards were banned from that because Black Devotion was too strong. Now we got Green Devotion is too strong. If we get strong devotion cards in another colour, that could rise to the top as well. Honestly, I mean, it would literally kill the deck, which I think is not a good idea considering it's a huge part of the metagame. I think potentially the best thing we could do is look to weaken the deck, if you know what I mean. And for that reason, I'll move on to the second card I was going to talk about here, and that is Khan the Great Creator. Khan, I don't think is currently an issue. It does give Mono Green Devotion. It's a silver bullet wish card, and anyone who's known the channel for a long time knows I love silver bullet wish cards. I love Glittering Wish in Modern. I love pulling stuff out my sideboard with the learn mechanic, so I can appreciate the value of it. The issue is Khan wishing for artifact means that for every silver bullet they print, every graveyard hate spell, every aggro hoser, every control hoser artifact that they now print into standard, it's going to then be another bullet that Khan can just pull out of the deck for the matchup. I think Khan is the thing I would like to see banned because, as I said before, it limits the design space for artifacts, and it also completely shuts down other artifact decks if we ever get those in Pioneer. Yeah, I think Khan would be my choice for banning from Mono Green Devotion, and it would be more of a preemptive banning. It would weaken their deck. At the same time, it would also limit the damage that Khan could do in the future. It would kind of be like how Wizards banned Lurrus in Pioneer at the same time as Modern. They acknowledged Lurrus wasn't currently a problem, but could eventually become a problem, so they got rid of him now before the meta went around it. Now, in my opinion, Khan is already a problem. The fact that it gets hit off their Storm the Festival and it just pulls out whatever they need to hose a deck or protect themselves is really strong. So while I don't think we will see it banned currently, I think that would be my first choice of cards to get rid of, would be Khan the Great Creator. Again, over Nykthos, because I don't want to outright destroy the deck. I'm sure there's plenty of people out here who will say, no, let's just hose devotion decks forever, we don't want to play them ever again. And yeah, I can understand that sentiment. I was entirely there when they were trying to ban Inverter of Truth. Man, that was a long time ago when you remember it. We're going okay here with our painted deck. We are up a game. As I say before, Rock's got some pretty good things here. I also feel that if we ban the Khan, as I said, it won't kill green Nykthos. It'll turn green Nykthos into more of an aggro kind of like a bigger collected company deck, where instead of getting to 4 mana accompanying, they'd be getting up to 6 mana to do the Storm the Festival. And they would just be grabbing stuff like trolls, trampling things, which I think would be more reasonable than just having them drop a Khan that could then pull out something that hoses your deck. Ugh. Very negative there, but like I said, I don't think it needs to be banned currently at this moment, but it would be my choice of the first card I would get out of the format, just to give green a little bit of a ping down. Well, we should move on to our other issues here. The other prominent deck in the format currently is Rakdos Midrange, and if you've been watching the video here, you can see the card I'm going to now suggest doing work, as you see here. Reflections of Kiki Jiki / Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I have major issues with this card here, which I'll go into in a second once I introduce our second game here. We're against Kaibo X Odia. So, props to this guy. He is playing a 5-color Fires Dragons deck. He is living up to the Kaiba name, and I have to just give him a round of applause for that, because it's absolutely amazing. He was a bit slow to start the match, but please watch this video, it was really fun. But as we were talking about here, Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Fable of the Mirror Breaker is one of the weirdest cards to me, because it's not inherently super busted. It's kind of like a snowball, because the first thing that happens is the first chapter creates the creature that will ramp. So you have 2 targets to kill, one will ramp next turn, one will loot and give them card selection. And then eventually the card selection will then turn into another creature that will give more value. The initial problem is the first chapter splits your targets, which makes it very hard to answer. Unless of course you have immediate counter magic, which is, as I said, the answer to everything if you play blue. The thing I have issue with Fable, as I say, apart from its value, is how many things play it. Transmogrify, Rakdos Midrange, Red Midrange. The list goes on and on if you look at the decks. Even the Fires of Invention deck, I know, the Enigmatic Incarnation deck runs Fable because it's just such good value. So it would hit a lot of decks here and potentially give them less staying power in mid-range. I mean, possibly the most damning thing I can say about Fable of the Mirror Breaker is, while we get stomped by dragons, is I'm a 5-color Niv-Mizzet deck. There is a free mana, same cost enchantment that literally says every multicolored spell you create will give you a treasure, and you can then cast a hideaway card for free. And I don't play that because Fable just trumps a card built for multicolored decks. That's how insane it is when you think about it. Now, honestly, I think Fable is probably even higher than Khan on my list of cards that has to go. But as I said before, with Green Devotion and Rakdos having such a predominant share of the metagame, I really think we'd have to hit both of the decks at the same time if we were to do it. Otherwise, the other one would simply rise to prominence. Again, I think it is kind of how I feel about it right now. I'm sure there are other cards that could be banned, and people will say that even well true. Yeah, even Jund Sacrifice, I just thought about, even plays the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. But all in all, it does feel like a card that might get banned for, I believe, Wizards' favourite term, diversity purposes. It was the most played card in the Pro Tour. It was the most played card on Arena when I checked. Not Arena, sorry, on MTGA's thing when I checked. It's still everywhere. It is a really fun card, but at the same time, it really probably has to go for the purposes of diversity. Just to open up the metagame a bit more and see what other stuff people want to play. Now, in regards to other cards from Rakdos, the other big one I've seen a lot of people talk about is Shieldred, the Apocalypse. For those who don't know, Shieldred, if you draw a card, you lose 2 life. If your opponent draws a card, they gain 2 life. Shieldred's on here, as I said before, it's a solid top-end card. It shuts down digging for answers. I know a lot of Phoenix players I have at our store are just not happy with that and really want Shieldred gone from the meta. I think a lot of that resentment carries over from Standard, in particular with the increased period of time we've now got to deal with Shieldred in Standard. So I don't think she sits on the same level to me. I feel that if we were to ban Shieldred, we would just bring in the next busted 4-drop Rakdos thing. Be that another dragon, another legendary, more Kalitases. Is it Kalitas? Kalitas? Can't remember the name of him now. But I do feel that Shieldred, while it does hurt draw go decks, it's not as much of a problem. It is pretty well easy to answer. And in regards to my previous point on Fable, the issue with Shieldred is one body that instantly enters the battlefield and goes, okay, answer me or I'll do something. Fable, as you can see on the gameplay happening in front of you, splits 2 targets and goes, you'd better have 2 individual answers or the miraculous 2-for-1 that I don't think exists. Basically, I think we need a Kolaghan's command that hits an enchantment instead of an artifact so we can kill the token and the artifact. Right. Again, very negative here talking about bans. Hope you've been enjoying the gameplay. Let me know, as I said below, what you think should be banned in Pioneer. Other honourable mentions I wanted to say, because I just wanted to touch on those 4 as the ones I am addressing. I've heard a lot of hate for Lotus Field. Lotus Field, I feel, is not a horrible deck. It's kind of like Storm in Modern. It's, well, when Storm isn't top tier. It's something that you have to sideboard for. And yes, it does turn it into a kind of, if you don't have a good game 1 against it, you're really hinging on your sideboard deck. But I don't think there's going to be an issue there. If I were to look at it, maybe Dig Through Time is one thing that should go from there, but again, as funny as it sounds, the options to ban in that deck, your only real option is to take the deck out by literally killing it by banning Lotus Field. Now, I don't think, again, it's a huge issue. You've just got to sideboard for it and be aware of it if it's prominent in the meta. Other prominent decks, I say we've got Rakdos Sacrifice, which is simply Rakdos without as much of a mid-range. We have Mono White Aggro, and I'm a firm believer that in Rock Paper Scissors that should always be a prominent control, mid-range, and aggro / and a combo deck, really, well, 4-way, to just deal with what goes on in the meta. Again, I don't think Lotus Field is something that we need to worry about getting banned. However, if it did rise to prominence, I think it would be a case of sniping out what pushed it over the edge. I don't think we'll ever get to that situation though, unless Wizards really messes up and prints some really good busted cards for them. Aside from that, most of the metagame is pretty diverse. As I said, we have a huge prominence of the top 2 decks, and then a good wide split below. That's why I feel that my final point is Pioneer is on the cusp of needing a ban. We have a huge presence of 2 decks which are kind of dominating right now. Like, we see them constantly. So we're on the verge of kind of like a Splinter Twin situation in Modern, for those of you who remember, where our best option and what happened was Splinter Twin wasn't inherently overtly super busted, but was one of the best decks in the format, and Wizards banned it to create diversity because they didn't want everyone going to a Modern tournament and having half their matches be Splinter Twin. It was never that level, but that's what they were implying. They didn't want to get to that level. But that opens some very questionable older things there. So if we were to see bans, and if I think need bans, in my personal opinion, I think we should take out Karn and Fable of the Mirror Breaker, just to shake up the meta a bit and see what replaces them in the formats. I don't feel that they are 100% necessary, but I do feel that if we are going to have a push for Pioneer, we might want to just weaken two of the stronger decks, particularly with the strong presence in Standard of black decks. We do not want players to come into Pioneer or Explorer on Arena after suffering through Standard and having more of the same. We want them to experience something different that makes them want to stay in the format. But with that said, that's my piece on bans. So to summarize, I would go with Karn and Fable if there were to be bans. Anyway, let's get into our last match here after taking out Kyber. We have OD204, and this is another rock situation here. So I'm going to leave you with that. If you have any thoughts of what you think should be banned in Pioneer, please let me know. I'm open to discussions. If there's anything I've missed or anything you think should have been more addressed, drop it below. And we'll see where we go here. Opponent drops a Reckoner Bankbuster, so we drop Growth Spiral here. We draw a Niv here, so I'm very wary that we're up against black, so we could see a Thoughtseize. I'm getting a white ready so I can just Leyline this Bankbuster before they get any value out of it. I'm fingers crossed here for a Lily or something that will give me a chance to just deploy a Niv and get some value. Opponent shocks in an Overgrown Tomb and drops a Graveyard Trespasser, which is an interesting choice. I choose here to go for a Tyrant Scorn. I'm going to discard my Assassin's Trophy. Then I'll use my Fable here to get my final colour to drop a Niv and score a solid reload. We hit beautifully here, back to a full hand of 6. Well, we get 5 off a Niv. We have 2 Answers to Clothis to grind out here. I am worried though with Clothis because our opponent is on black. They could have Invoked Despair. That's the only thing I know of that would force them to get rid of it, but they ultimately give up there. I choose to bring in some Thoughtseizes here, or... oh, no I don't. It's a while, see, I'm recording these matches pretty far in advance and just loading them in as I decide on the topic to talk about. As you notice, we got up to Platinum here. So, yeah, it's sticking pretty well. I'm enjoying this build. I've been deeply impressed, as you've seen in the previous video if you were watching while I was rambling, that Into the Beanstalk, sorry, Up the Beanstalk, not Into the Beanstalk, has really impressed me in my gameplay. I'm genuinely trying it out more and more here. It triggers so well with Niv, and I'm trying it in Pioneer if we ever get Bring to Light in this format. Right, we're moving into our next match here. This hand is interesting, we'll keep it. The big issue we have here is if we draw lands. So we don't get a land off our first one, which is bad, but we'll see. Opponent goes with the Duress. Clear targets Fable of the Mirror Breaker, but they take a Growth Spiral, which is interesting. It means they probably have more disruption in their hand. They drop another land, go for the Thoughtseize. Yep, take Fable, good call. We're finding our lands now, which is pretty good, so we'll get Wandering Mind here. We'll get up the Beanstalk to try and get a bit more cycling card draw going. I'm going to use Tyrant Scorn here. Oh, I'm going to draw first, see what I find. I'm going to play my land. I'm going to bounce Shieldred here. I don't have an answer and I want to dig and I want to force them to replay it. Hit them for 2. They drop another land and replay a Shieldred here. I'm going to bounce it again to buy some time. Use another of the Beanstalk to draw a card. We again are not finding our lands, which is putting us in a pretty bad situation here. And our opponent goes for the Field of Ruin here. We're just going to grab, I believe, white. So we still have all 5 colours across 4 lands. They replay a Shieldred. We find Vanishing Verse, which is perfect here, so we'll get rid of Shieldred with that. Fortunately, we don't have anything else, so we just got to swing in and attack. Our opponent is on 7 lands here. They drop a Kalitas, a Glisser. At this point, it's pretty much getting away from us here. I consider dropping some answers. I can get a land back with the Rebirth, Cosmic Rebirth. I ultimately decided not to play anything here. I'm going to just see what our opponent does. I believe though this one has rushed away from us. They drop a Wrenn and Worldbreaker. Spicy include. They make their land into a 3/3 Hexproofer. If we block here, we give them a 2/2 zombie, and we currently don't have an answer to that on the board. I'm going to Cosmic Rebirth here. I'm going to get back the Fable. I can use... Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to let them through here and give them the target of stopping the Fable. Yep. Again, we don't want to give them zombies. We go down to 8, they're up to 15 here. They drop a land. We get a Clarion here, which unfortunately will give them zombies and give them a lethal attack. So we'll just concede and move on to the 3rd match here. We're going to run it back, I think. We had a pretty unlucky run there. Again, I got greedy and kept a 2-land hand. Again, we're down to 5 here. And I'm genuinely tempted to get rid of the 2 active cards to Fabled their Fort Seizers. Instead, we'll just go with a Triome. We get a tap land from opponent. We'll put a tap land in to save life. They drop another land. They go for a Fort Seize here. We have 2 removal spells, so I'm not too fussed about which one they take. The obvious choice is Vanishing Verse. We're going to run out this Wandering Mind that we hit. We find a Leyline Binding. So we still got 2 answers in hand. They drop their land. Go for a Graveyard Trespasser. I was just checking here when I was reading, is the Graveyard Trespasser target with a spell or ability? And well, we've got to make our choice here. We'll see what our opponent does. They drop a land, and they go for combat here. Nothing takes off from a graveyard. We're going to take 4 here. They play a Mosswood Dread Knight. I make a risky play here. I'm guiding on drawing a land here, so I'm going to Leyline Binding, hit the Coffin, discard Assassin's Trophy, and we hit the untapped land because I never don't get punished. We hit 3 removal spells, which is pretty decent. We're in a pretty okay spot now. See what our opponent does with 5 mana, well 4 mana. They have an Assassin's Trophy, so I'll get us another land. Don't mind if I do. I'm checking what colours I want here. They attack in. I will offer the trade here. Now they can cast the Adventure Side here, which they do to gain land. We'll just rerun another Wandering Mind. Get another Leyline Binding. We get Fort Seized here, but all 3 cards are removal spells, so there's nothing really they can take that'll break the synergy here. but it could be quite telling. They take Vanishing Verse, so they clearly have some monocolor permanents they want to resolve. They have a think about things here. Again, Mosswood Dreadnought I think is the main reason why we're seeing a lot more Rock in the rank queues. People are trying out. We top deck Niv like a beast, so we'll just replay him. I want a Vanishing Verse here, I think, because they discarded 2 Vanishing Verses deliberately, so we'll hold on to that one, see what our opponent does. And ultimately they scoop to the value. Thanks, let me know what bans you would like to see in the formats below.